Hello and welcome to this interview hosted by me, Beau, and I am joined by Mr. Devon Tracy, aka Atheism is Unstoppable. How are you, sir?
I am great, and I've been informed this is not live, which means I can mess up and be slow and just like ask for a do-over. And I do have a safety net, which is awesome. Editing.
Good. Yeah, no, it is a little bit of pressure off. I know whenever I've done live stuff, you do have to really watch your language in case, like a C bomb or an F bomb drops out. You have to be a
Hold
bit.
on, let me try to guess what those words are that you just mentioned. Have you ever done that in a
uh,
live broadcast? Do you have a word
y-
that?
oh, I don't, because I haven't done loads of stuff live, but I have done a fair bit. I don't think I've ever actually accidentally dropped an F and or C bomb. I think I did say
Yeah.
shit once. And to be quite honest, even though I just said that, sort of the minor swear words are usually okay as long as you don't go over the top. Um,
Well,
so there you
we're demonetized officially.
go.
I mean, sometimes I listen back to a recording and I say the F word and the S word way too much, and it depresses me because it's really not an effective use of language, and it's sloppy and it's classless, and you have to time it. A proper F bomb can be perfect, but the more you use it, it's like the law of diminishing returns.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. I am actually a big fan of a very well placed, well timed F bomb, or even the big C. I did an interview with Count Dankula once, and
Hmm.
just the way he is, like a fair few Scottish people are, it's just every other word is the F word. Where you're not even registering it. It's honestly like every sentence has got a number of them in. And there was no way to possibly edit it out or anything. So we just had to, it was sort of a one off. We just had to put a disclaimer at the beginning saying, strong language. Um, but I guess dank is sort of allowed, I think.
Yeah, I mean, Scottish people, they can get away with anything with that accent. I mean, honestly, all of you guys, I'm jealous, and I also think I have a point. I attribute like a good 35% of your success to your accent. And that's said with all due respect. And I've said that to Sargon. I'll say it to his face. For the world audience, you guys sound like just graduates of Hogwarts, and we just like to hear you talk. And so, if you have a point on top of that, it's like, oh my God, that's just a perfect storm of watchability.
The thing is, with my accent, I was speaking to an American person the other day, and I just mentioned that my accent isn't one of the best ones, and they said, "Oh, I don't really hear much of a difference between you." I was saying that I'm not very well spoken. My accent isn't isn't posh at all, and they said, "Oh, I can't really tell the difference," which is nice to me, but most British people hear my accent. It's quite London, quite Essexy. And so, if whenever I get the compliment that from Americans usually that it's the British accent, just all round, all British accents are good or nice or something.
Well,
I'll
it's
take it.
interesting.
I'm happy to take that.
Yeah, take advantage of it by all means. But it's like, it's funny because you talk about regional differences, but also class differences, which is obviously hugely important and noticeable when you hear someone from Britain talk. But to the outsider, it's kind of a low key insult, which is to say, I don't care where you're from within England. It doesn't matter to me that, if you're from Essex or you're from Bristol, what is the significance to me? But it is interesting. There's a great scene in Inglorious Bastards where the American spy, they're in that basement sort of bar, and he's being outed because his accent is weird. And this Nazi officer is like, I've never heard that accent before. I know this guy's from Frankfurt. I know that guy's from Freiburg. Where the hell are you from?
Yeah.
And it's a beautiful thing that he lost it in that little nuance.
That's a great scene. That's one of the great scenes. I did a review of that with Mauler once, and it's a great scene. The tension in that. But you must have it in
Mm,
America though a bit. Do you can obviously hear the difference between you're a native Californian, but do you
yeah.
do you have any sort of innate prejudice? Prejudice is a strong word. I don't mean it in that strong
Mm.
of a sense, but against I don't know like a very strong Southern drawl or something, or someone's got an
Um,
extremely heavy like New Jersey accent or something.
I'd say most accents are likable. So the Midwest, or I don't know if you've seen Fargo, the movie, but any sort of weirdness put on language, it comes across as endearing. Maybe not so with the Canadians. So when they start talking about sorry and tomorrow, it's sort of goofy, and it's like, what are you people doing? But there are definitely different ways people talk. The weird part is when you step outside yourself and you break the fourth wall and you say, what is my coding? What are my tendencies? So I have buried within me the desire or the tendency to say the word like
Mm.
way too much. And that comes from the 80s in California where it's like See, I just did it. Just
Yeah.
did it right there.
Yeah.
That is me talking about saying the word like, saying the word like. And it's I don't know if you could scrub that from your system. It's sort of who you are.
Yeah, I do the same. I say like a bit too much, especially when you're on autopilot, because a lot of the content you do is sort of, pre-recorded. So I suppose you've got that opportunity to redo it again
Totally.
or edit it out a little bit here and there if you really want to and stuff. But yeah, quite often when we record epochs and things with Carl, it's pretty much, well, we don't re-record any of it really, so it's all one take essentially. And I do
Yeah.
realise that you have all sorts of little ticks and things that you do that
Oh,
you're not happy with,
oh, it's terrible. I mean, honestly, as a YouTuber, you spend a lot of time listening to yourself, and it's not something I was planning on doing, to break down and see a visualization of how I talk and all of your mess ups and the tendencies and the patterns and the spittle. I mean, it's unbelievable the amount of just clicks and pops. It's like you're speaking dolphin or something. Uh, I'm not sure I could get used to calling Sargon Carl. I'm sure you guys refer to him as Carl. He is an actual person. I'm used to calling him Sargon or Don Sargoon. So I'm wondering if I could stick with that.
Yeah, feel free, feel free. um,
Okay.
So I've had you on because, of course, I'm a fan. I've been a fan for a long time. If anyone doesn't know, on my small channel, History Bro, we had a conversation quite a while ago now, because it doesn't seem that long ago, but I think it was a year or even two ago. But I've been a fan of your content for yonks, basically. And so it's just unfortunate that the way you've been, persecuted, I think, essentially. I don't think that's too strong of a word.
You could say rape.
Right? Yeah.
I'll take it to rape. No, yeah, it's been, it's weird because I've had a long run with Patreon. Let's review how banned I've been and canceled I've been. What is my sin, first of all? Well, it doesn't even matter. Like, my guilt or innocence is kind of like not even, I mean, spoiler alert, I've said nothing wrong. I stand by everything I've ever said, and no one can show me anything I've done that is either, wrong or egregious in any way or violates any policy. I've been banned from YouTube 3 times, 4 times, the fourth being final. I've been banned on multiple accounts on YouTube. I've been banned on Twitter, Facebook, Vimeo, Pornhub, and PayPal. Did I say that? Venmo, and now Patreon. Now, the reason for all those is pretty much the same. It's because I'm pushing back against the taboo that you're not allowed to speak with any degree of honesty or frankness on topics that make people uncomfortable. Now, it started with religion. I mean, it's very quaint to say that now, but back in the day, it was not commonplace to criticize religion. I always point out the founding fathers of this, which is Monty Python back in the 70s, talking trash about Christianity in a Christian country. Like, that was ballsy at the time. But since then, it's all watered down, and there's 1,000 people that have done it before you. There isn't 1,000 people that talk about race before you. Now, before the race stuff, we had Islam, and that pivot to talking honestly about Islam was frowned upon in a massive way, to the point where you'd be gone. You're gone from all this stuff. And in fact, the one strike, I've gotten hundreds of strikes on YouTube, but the one strike I think was legit, and I will own it, was when I put the word Islam on the screen, and I had an animation of a guy taking a liquid dump on it that was just looping. Now, I thought it was artsy. I feel like I have a point with it, but okay, if that violates a term, I'm willing to take that. I mean, do you think it does?
Well, I mean, in my opinion, short of actually inciting violence or saying something libelous,
Right.
truly libelous, I think you should be allowed to say anything. I'm a freedom of expression. Well, I was going to say freedom of expression extremist, but it's actually not. That's how they'd like to paint us, people like us, just speaking the truth, that we're the extreme ones. I think there is a limit to true, absolute freedom of speech and freedom of expression. Like I say, something where you're, that's libelous, or something where you are advocating for violence or something. That society is better off without that. But anything short of that.
Yeah.
Whereas now we're in a world now. aren't we, Devon? We live in a world where it's gone,
Yes.
it's a cliche to say, but it's gone absolutely crazy, where it's now, it's not defined in any way. It's at the discretion of some people you don't know. It's entirely at their discretion. And so that's what I think is what's happened with you, and particularly with the recent Patreon thing, is that somebody, or Blair at Patreon, or her team, or whatever, whoever, who knows, we'll probably never know for sure exactly who, just made a decision, just entirely at their discretion, that your ability to have patrons is just at an end now. That's it. No appeal, no nothing.
So here's the beauty of it. And I just thought of this. I mean, they're part of the Trust and Safety Board, which sounds really like weird. It's amorphous. What does it actually mean? The safety part is they're protecting my audience from me.
Right. Yeah.
So these are consenting adults who are paying me money every month that I had to sell on that idea, which is a mini miracle. I'm competing with HBO Max and Disney Plus and Netflix and friggin' Lotus Eaters, right? Like everyone wants a piece of this pie. I've somehow convinced 1,000 people to do that. And now that's all gone. They just wiped that away. And it's like, the safety, what is the safety part of it? No, the trust part. The trust part, we're supposed to trust them blindly.
It's Orwellian, isn't it? Sorry, yeah. I interrupted you. Please. No, please go ahead.
No, the interruption has to be, that's a part of Zoom and Skype. That's part of the culture. I expect to be interrupted.
No, it is Orwellian. It's the opposite. It's sort of a classic Maoist or Soviet thing where it's the opposite of what it's called. Like the trust and safety. Sorry, what trust, what safety, whose trust, whose safety. I mean, it really is the opposite. Like you have the Ministry of Love, which is, sort of state-sponsored terrorism. The Ministry of Truth, which deals exclusively in lies. I mean, it is honestly disgusting. We live in a world now where, particularly straight white males really are persecuted.
Also, to be fair, the Ministry of Silly Walks does do silly walks, so they're keeping it real. Yes, it's astonishing what they have decided to do. And here's where it gets lovely is the reason they did it. So I have to speculate because they won't tell me. They literally just copy and paste their hate speech policy and say, "You violated that, and trust us, we went over it thoroughly." And I said, "Okay, well, what did I say?" And they don't tell me. And they don't even tell me they're not telling me. So it's like this passive aggressive thing of like, I just, wrote 2 pages asking you to explicitly specify what I said to violate the thing. You're ending a 10-year relationship. Now, I would make the money argument to them and say, look, guys, I've made you a lot of money. This is a mutually beneficial thing. What are we doing here? Like, who is winning in this? My patrons lose. I lose half of my income. And suffer financially. They lose money. These are credit card processors, middlemen. They have one job to do, and yet but I can't make the money argument because they don't care. What I produce for them is nothing. It's peanuts. They're worth $4 billion. When you're worth $4 billion, have you ever seen the what is that Silicon Valley show? It's called Silicon Valley, I think. It was a hysterical show, and it's talking about the pomposity of the egos of these dudes who are in Silicon Valley, who are richer than rich, and they're like, you know what? Let's put our noses into this content. Let's figure out what's good and what's bad, and let's make the world a better place. And like the concept of free speech, I realize this is a private company and whatnot, but like you either believe in free speech or you don't. And I thought that was enshrined, at least in American culture. And the ironic thing is that in British culture, you don't have that enshrined in any sort of document, really, free speech. You don't have free speech. But you also have a system where if someone lies about you, you can sue their ass. Whereas in America, it's very difficult to get a slander case on someone or a libel.
One of the things I'm surprised at, I think we're about the same age. And one of the things I have been surprised with in the last 10 years or the last few years where all this stuff has just been dialed up and gone crazy, is that when we were children, when we were growing up, sort of in the 80s, 90s, it seemed that the idea of freedom of speech was, as you say, just absolutely enshrined, woven into at the very fabric of our lives and society. And anyone that even kind of hinted, I'm talking about in the 80s and 90s, anyone that hinted that they weren't in favour, entirely full throttle in favour of freedom of speech, was sort of immediately ridiculed and or
Yeah.
like, you know, a little bit ostracised, and just, of course you're on the wrong side of history, to use one of their phrases.
Hmm.
Of course, freedom of speech. What are you, like are you a Ruski?
Yeah.
Only Reds and Soviets would even dream, really, of being against freedom of speech anyway. And
I
now
know.
you find yourself, just you look on Twitter and loads of people are arguing for the further curtailing of of freedom of speech. And but I don't know what it's like for you, but even close friends and family you find are
Hmm.
actually not in favour of it.
Well,
It's
there's a
mad.
couple things at play here. Yeah, it's terrible. Freedom of speech, yeah, it was a basic concept up there with like a politician getting up and saying, I'm in favor of educating our kids and stopping poverty.
Right. Yeah.
Also, freedom of speech. Um, it's not a controversial stance, but what's crazy now is the self imposed um, banishment of the freedom of speech. So people are afraid to talk because of the consequences of talking, which has, the climate and social media has made that be the rule. But there's also, corporations who are like, no, 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 you can't say that. And we're so cowardly with it. We're not even going to tell you what you can't say,
Mhm.
but just understand that you said something that you can't say.
Mm.
I mean, and I know that they're embarrassed to tell me what it was about because they know they have no case.
Mm.
And these people had the audacity to say, I can appeal. I can appeal this. Appeal what? I don't even know what I did. And I know I didn't do anything. And look, it comes down to this. It was about Emmett Till. That, I'm about 99% sure. The last video I posted was about Emmett Till. 3 out of my last 4 were about Emmett Till. And what happened was a woman named Blair is a millennial who just saw the movie Till. And she's sort of, bought into that, thinks Emmett Till is this innocent dove. And so she disagreed with something, or I said something that she didn't like. And she just said, ooh, and she spasmed and said, I'm going to flip the switch and pull the lever or lever, and get this guy out, and I'm going to blame hate speech, even though it's not hate speech.
Mm.
Let me ask you this. What could I possibly say about Emmett Till that would constitute hate speech? A call to violence? Like, hey, guys, let's go lynch Emmett Till. Let's go desecrate his grave. What do you think I said that could be hateful towards this guy?
No, nothing at all, from what I gathered. I suppose, in this Blair's mind, or someone in her
Mhm.
team, the fact that you pointed out that he was in fact guilty of
Yeah,
a sex crime, that just that, I suppose,
that's my
just
opinion.
that is
Yeah.
what you said, which is, I think, a matter of pure fact.
Right. So
So,
well, it's beautiful. Like, okay, again, it comes down to how do you know what you know? This is the same stuff we dealt with atheism. At the core, Christopher Hitchens, Sam Harris, whenever those guys were talking, it came down to how do you know what you know? Why do you think there's a God? Why do you think Emmett Till is guilty of a sex crime? And by the way, saying I think he's guilty of sexual assault is not hateful. It's an opinion about an event from 1955, for God's sake. So why do I think so? Because there's one account. He said, she said. This is just she said because he's dead. She said he came in. She has, all these details. He grabbed me. He said, I've fucked white women before. All this stuff. It's not like this crazy tale. This is a very believable event that happened.
she's a credible witness, isn't she?
Exactly. She's the same story the whole time. By the way, now I have to make a video because there are some people, smart people, who have bought into the idea that she recanted that. And she goes, oh, actually, I lied. So that story spread around like wildfire so much to the point that a person who has a life and doesn't have time to research this independently thinks that that woman recanted. She didn't. I mean, it's incredible. I mean, it goes so deep, the lying and just the cover up that goes on. Like, are you aware of Emmett Till's father and what he did?
No.
Oh, really? Okay. It's interesting because in the movie Till, he's portrayed as a war hero, and he's referenced as such by his son out when he's picking cotton. And in reality, the guy was a domestic abuser. He beat Emmett Till's mother. She hated his guts. He was about to be sent to jail, but they said, look, it's 1943. We need you in the war. So you can either come to war or go to jail. He chose war. We sent him out to Italy. And on one of his off days in a provincial town in Italy, he went out and raped 2 white women and killed a third. So the 2 ones that were raped came over and said, hey, one of your guys just raped us. And they were like, okay, they had a trial. He was court-martialed or whatever, and they hung him. The United States did. And then they sent back his dog tags and his ring to Mrs. Till, who then gave it to Emmett Till, who took it down south and thought of him as a war hero because I guess the mom didn't tell him. Now, I'm telling you that the desire to make Emmett Till innocent has spread to his father. And I shit you not, there are podcasts made by ABC declaring that Louis Till is innocent of the rape and murder in Italy in 1944. It's incredible to witness this. And this is what we're up against. It's like a beast. It is a large moving force of nature that they want reality and the past. I guess the past is easier to manipulate. You know, revisionist history is a little bit easier than revisionist present. But like, they want this to be the way they want it to be, and it's just not. And if a messenger like me comes out and says something really innocuous, like, you know, I'm against the fact that he sexually assaulted a woman, and I believe he did because she said so, then I get punished for it. I'm removed. And by the way, I said I don't think he should have died for this. Obviously, that's a caveat that embarrasses me that I have to say.
Yeah, and you said it multiple times, didn't you?
Like 10 times in the 3 videos, I'm saying he shouldn't have been murdered. That was wrong, obviously.
Yeah.
But I'm hateful, and I'm calling for some sort of I don't know, attack on Emmett Till.
But it's just one more example, because what's that organisation? There's a whole organisation, isn't there, that just works to try and get convicted murderers out of prison.
Oh, of course, it's the Innocence Project.
And that's it.
How could it be bad if it has innocence in the title?
So something as sinister and malevolent as that. Because you've made a fair few videos about things. What was that ridiculous gang rape that took place in Central Park?
Well,
and they released and the woman survived just about, didn't she? And didn't they release the guys and gave them, made them into some heroes in some way? I mean, that is truly perverse. That is where our sense of justice, our very society, has been perverted inside out, to the point where it's inside out. So you're right. We're dealing with a beast of a thing here.
Well, yes, and look, that was one of my favorite gang rape murders, whatever. I covered it. It's the Central Park Five. They made a movie about it. It's astonishing. Like I want to do a poll and just ask people, like, do you think these guys are innocent or guilty? And the average American is going to say they're innocent because of the propaganda. I mean, look, no one has time to figure this stuff out. And what's even scarier, no one really cares. Like, do I really care? Why am I going to die on the hill that these guys did rape this woman and are guilty of it? And they did admit to it. Why? If it cost me personally, like Donald Trump did this. Donald Trump at the time put out an article and said, these guys are, you know, they're wilding out there. It's insane what they've done. We should bring back the death penalty, because at the time he thought they had killed this woman, and this happened in Central Park, sort of in his area. And even to this day, he's like, I still think those guys are guilty. What are you talking about? And that's correct. That's the correct stance. But most people will knee jerk. If you're against Trump, you'll just go, well, he's got to be wrong because he has to be evil. But yeah, they all became multimillionaires, and they're celebrated. They receive standing ovations at award shows.
I mean, it's truly sickening, isn't it? Truly sickening. Like Barack Obama or even Joe Biden giving medals out to people that are known to have gone to Epstein's Island. It's sort of, it's so brazen as well, because all the information is out there. It's so brazen. It's, in my mind, to me, it's deliberate. It's sort of very deliberate gaslighting. It's
I've been to Epstein's Island, but that was just on a stopover. So does that count? Or
just a layover, just one night?
Yeah. That's interesting. Yeah, Biden put out a speech the other day about Emmett Till. That was insane. He passed an anti-lynching bill a year ago, which is the most redundant thing in the history of time. Like, hey guys, you know how you just took a guy out back and like strung him up and murdered him? Yeah, that's against the law. It has been against the law for quite a number of years, but now it's super against the law. Now we're going to throw you in jail even more. Like, what? How can it be worse? I mean,
you remember the case of poor old Jesse Smollett, though. I mean, come on, let's get real. No, but joking aside, it's funny though, isn't it, that in the Twitter timeline there seems to be quite a few cases of white people effectively being lynched by black mobs It's not
Oh,
all that rare that you'll see a video of that pop up in your Twitter timeline. But thank
are
God
you
the
talking about
Biden
physically?
administration passed that piece of legislation. Thank
Yeah,
God.
exactly. I mean, and he color codes it too. So it's like lynching is really just something that happens to black people. Meanwhile, lynching has been a huge part of like, here's a phrase you're never going to hear, white history. Um, but like the history of the Old West and just, the foundation of America, white people were not immune to lynching and were lynched all over the gaff. So like, it's kind of insane. But yeah, just the way he resets the story of Emmett Till and, in 30 seconds, just lies through his teeth over and over again. And it's like, for me, it's neither here nor there, but I've seen this pattern way too many times. I don't care. In fact, I've avoided Emmett Till forever. And just like every other one of these cases, I assumed that was a racist thing that happened because that's all I heard through the grapevine. And it's been told. It's like a urban legend. It's like, why would I assume otherwise? What, the people that came before me, they're lying to me? That's a weird assumption. In fact, when you're raised from a child, from a baby on, you're taught to believe your elders, to trust them. And it turns out, no, you shouldn't be doing that. You're being lied to on all of these things, whether it's the Tulsa race riots or Emmett Till or the Central Park Five or, you name it. What gets crazy is when it's stuff that happened like a year ago and you're being lied to, or like there's a video of it. It's playing on the side and people are lying about it.
Like, who was that guy recently that they tried to make out into sort of a new George Floyd type
Yeah.
deal,
Oh, Tyree Nichols.
Yeah, that, or even what was the LA riots? Rodney King, for example. Like he did quite bad crimes and refused to be arrested, didn't he? Not that he deserved to be beaten ridiculously as he was, but he'd done multiple felonies and was resisting arrest endlessly. I mean,
Well,
so
I know it's bad. It's comparing the Tyree Nichols to Rodney King is an interesting one because the Tyree Nichols was way worse, but it's not going to get the traction, and it's already off the radar of the public consciousness because the cops were black and because they were arrested. But the trial will come up, and if they do get off, which I mean, I don't know how I feel about it. I mean, I think many of them should get off. Maybe not the guy throwing the punches. I mean, I don't know. It's a tricky thing because these other guys didn't stop him, and it was repugnant what they did to that guy. But like, he didn't lead them on a high-speed chase. Rodney King did. Rodney King was physically resisting arrest. He was high on PCP. And what the cops in the Rodney King case did was far less brutal. And also, they didn't kill the guy. Like Rodney King was beaten up, but he didn't die.
Yeah, I mean, but it's the point you say about how something that only just happened, or there's full footage of it, and it's spun in such a way where reality has gone out the window almost straight away.
So yeah, I mean, think of it. We're historians, aren't we? Can we say that?
Yeah, sure.
So think of telling a lie or telling a story that happened a long time ago. The further back you go, the less oversight there is, the less likely it is that you're going to be checked on it, fact checked. So if I say to you, Moses parted the Nile, you're like, okay, I'll have to take your word for it, pal. I wasn't there. If I said to you that Joe Biden just flew off the podium and just soared into space, you'd be like, show me the video. But we want to believe. What is that? The X-Files slogan? People do want to believe, and they like the point of the story. The point of the story typically is to scratch an emotional itch, and it's doing that. It is working. We love stories, and facts tend to be ugly and uncomfortable.
There's one thing I wonder what you think about this idea, and I'm not talking about you or me, or even probably most of the people that are going to watch this video, but in a broad sense, I think one of the problems white boys have got,
Oh my God,
that,
was it a slur?
that white men in the West
Okay.
have got, is that we're far too trusting, credulous even, to the point of naivete, to the point of where you have to be sort of endlessly shown that you're being naive to the point of self-destruction. And even then, a lot of people still won't accept it.
It comes from a good place, I think. I mean, that's the best way. Well, that's giving them the benefit of the doubt, but it is weak and stupid. But they want to be accommodating. They want to be nice. They don't want to rock the boat. It does make me uncomfortable. It does sound very weak. But like, yeah, in that same speech Joe Biden did about Emmett Till, he said, lynchings happened all throughout our history. It's a dark, ugly past, and it was innocent men and women and children being lynched with ropes. Now, what he's saying there is that everyone lynched was innocent. I mean, it is a carte blanche, like exoneration of everyone hanging from a tree. Now, I understand the impulse to want to think that's true. In fact, I used to think that's true. If I saw a picture like that, I'd be like, well, that guy's innocent. Like, look, this evil mob of people did something. I have a news flash for you people, and I hate to be the bearer of this. They weren't innocent. Now, sometimes they might have been. Often, if not almost always, they were not innocent. Now, I understand extrajudicial killings is wrong, and there's a whole process, and it's not nice to kill people, even if it's in punishment. But like, it's so interesting to reflect on the desire for those people to be innocent. They're not.
That's an interest, isn't it? It's an interesting insight into the psychology of we moderns, because most accounts I know of lynchings is that usually someone would come out of the courthouse having been found guilty. And instead of them being allowed to be led away either to prison or to an actual gallows, they would just then be taken by a mob and lynched. So,
well, yeah, like in the Tulsa race riots, they were worried that this young black kid named Diamond Dick, who had just sexually assaulted a white woman in an elevator, they were worried that he was going to be lynched. One of the reasons they were worried is because a month prior, the same town had lynched a guy and his girlfriend, maybe. It was like a Bonnie and Clyde thing because those two people had killed a cop, like a local cop. They'd killed him. They shot him in the stomach, and he was a white guy. But the town people were like, "We know you killed him, and now we're going to kill you." Now, this was like, the early 1900s. It's like things were done a little differently back then. But it's just been stigmatized to the point of lunacy. And again, it's like a story. It's like there's a good guy and a bad guy. And we're used to that. Like even in Star Wars, like I guess in the final, what was it, Return of the Jedi, where it's like, was Darth Vader even bad? But like for the first two movies, like he's definitely the bad guy. Like you look at the way he's dressed. Like this dude is evil personified. Nowadays, of course, we have like Game of Thrones, where it's like there is no good or bad, really. Everyone's kind of bad, and that's more true to life. But it still doesn't take away from the fact that we enjoy villains and we enjoy saying, "What's the morality of this story? Who's the bad person here?" And then, what's that British sitcom that said, "Are we the baddies?" Where he's questioning it.
Yeah, Mitchell and Webb. Yeah,
right.
He's part of the Death's Head SS Panzer Division. The Death's Head. Are we the baddies? Yeah. But
I mean, Antifa's got to have had that conversation at some point, right?
Yeah. At what point? How do you not realise? But yeah, I think there is, again, it's an interesting point of sort of human psychology, perhaps, that this desire to make everything very black and white. There's a goodie and there's a baddie in all narratives. And of course you want to be the goodies, you want to be on the good side. And the baddies are not really human and deserve to be annihilated, really. And it's very, very easy to write that sort of narrative, to sell that sort of narrative. And it's very, very, most humans are quite susceptible to that. It's easier that way, right? It's easier if all our enemies are not really human. They're like foot soldiers in the Turtles. They're actually robots. They're not even real men. So you can just kill them. You can just annihilate them.
Well, I think that it's actually less about wanting there to be baddies than you wanting to be the goodie. And for there to be good, there has to be bad. So you have to show the distinction there. And so this is something I call the Secretariat effect. Secretariat was a horse, famously won a race by like 22 lengths. And it wasn't the fact that he ran the race fast. It's the fact that the second place horse was so far back that it looked like this horse was like, flying at the speed of light. So if you're not a super fast horse, if you're not a goodie, you don't have to be. Don't worry about it. Just pretend that the guy next to you is really slow horse or really a baddie. So it's a strategy to say, I'm so much better than these people over here because they're fill in the blank, pro-slavery. They're racist. I'm not. They are. But they're not. It doesn't matter. Just say they are. So this is what's going on. You are blowing smoke up your own ass. You are trumpeting your own horn. It's masturbatory. I mean, it happens all the time. I feel like I'm a pattern recognizing machine that's never turned off. And just watching humanity on the internet is a fascinating
Hmm.
thing.
Hmm.
And it's just you're collecting data the whole time. And this is the one thing, like humans don't come out looking that great. Like we all have these tendencies, and the internet seems to stoke up the worst part of humanity.
It's like
It's on
virtue
display.
signaling, isn't it? Virtue
Yes,
signaling.
of
It
course.
seems like the West is, in some parts, we're not guilty of it particularly, but virtue signaling its way into its own grave.
But like imagine,
Suicidally virtue signaling, where
yeah,
your ancestral homeland is overtaken by foreign invaders, and you're happy to just virtue signal that you're happy with
welcome.
that. It's
Welcome refugees.
yeah.
Well, it's like, yeah, but the thing is, it works. I mean, this is the thing to play devil's advocate. It's like, have you ever seen a boy band? Like, you'll have One Direction come out and put out a song, and the theme is like, I love you just the way you are, with all your flaws. I find you to be perfect. And this song is written for them. And it's like, I love your muffin top, and I love your, acne, and I love just the idiosyncratic quirkiness to you. You're beautiful. That got them laid. Now, you can't deny that. Now, none of it's true, but it's like these are techniques that are used. So, you know, if you're at a pub and you're going to say something like about, I don't know, the grooming gangs, or the disproportionate rape in your country, like it's not going to, the girl you brought out is going to look at you and go, "Oh God, oh, did you have to, like, you spoiled the night again? Like, can we not do this?" So someone has to do it at some point. That's the thing.
Hmm.
Like, I understand there's social settings where this is totally inappropriate to talk about,
Hmm.
baby rape in South Africa, but like someone should be doing it
Hmm.
somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, it's fallen to people a bit like
Right.
us, really,
Yeah.
Devon. I mean,
Geniuses.
that is the sort of crusade you've been on since the start, isn't it? It's saying that this is uncomfortable, but it's the goddamn truth. Like, this is hard to hear.
Yes.
It's hard to say. It may even be dangerous, either financially or actually, for me to
Hmm.
be saying it.
Yep.
It may make me very, very unpopular in certain circles, but god damn it, it's the truth, and no one else is saying it. I'm going to say it.
Oh,
So
it's disgusting.
kudos to you, because you're way ahead of the curve. You're doing it before most people I know. I mean,
Hmm.
I myself on Twitter sometimes are a bit sort of suicidally aggressive, saying stuff where, if Elon wasn't in charge, I would have been banned off there like many times over already.
Oh my God.
Just thank God Elon sort of allows it to pass a bit. But it's like your thing with Emmett Till. It's simply the truth. It's just
Yes.
simply the truth that you call out
Well,
the brazen liars from our political overlords.
yeah, it's really sad for me. Like, listening to the president of the country say something so false and so, sanctimoniously false. It's just like, what are you doing? It I feel compelled, like someone has to step up. Fine, I'll do it. Fine. And obviously I'm in a position where I used to be, where I could speak the truth and be paid for it, and, have a financially sustainable thing going on. Now I've been punished and canceled, where to the point where, Patreon has banished me. And by the way, I'm now at Subscribestar, well, and censored TV. So Gavin McInnes is not going to, ban me for free speech violations.
Hmm.
If you go to censored.tv and use the coupon code AIU, let me just get my quick plug-in.
No, please do.
Then I get paid, and you can watch all the stuff. There's tons of content there. It's an incredible place, actually. It's got a great app for your phone. Or you go to subscribestar.com/atheism, and I'm over there. You can sign up and get all my videos and basically not let Patreon win.
Hmm.
And these, MFers over there are trying to silence people.
Hmm.
And it's such a shame because, like, I didn't expect the Innocence Project to be getting obvious murderers out of prison time and time again. That wasn't what I thought would have happened in society. It turns out it is.
Hmm.
And so, speaking out about it, and you mentioned Twitter and Elon Musk, I just got a violation where I was like banned for 7 days or something for a tweet I made about the mass shootings in America. And literally all it was I went through the 39 mass shootings in January and figured out who did them by race. And it was like 95% black. There was literally one guy in Utah killed his whole family who was white. That was the only white guy in all of January that did a mass shooting. The rest were all black, and then a few Mexicans. And I was just like, just so you guys know, this is what we're looking at. This is the problem. It's the pit bulls that are biting the babies to this degree. And didn't say anything about it. It wasn't like going off on some. Just that's what happened with mass shootings in America today. It's on the news, but they never talk about this aspect of it. I bring it up, I get banned from Twitter under Elon Musk,
Mm.
a white South African. But I mean, who knows what the hell's going on with that?
It's a
But
shame.
it's yeah, it's fragile. Everyone's fragile.
I do encourage anyone that's so inclined out there to go to Devon's Subscribe Star, if nothing else, because yeah, don't let
Outs-
these bastards win, for God's sake. I mean, we're lucky enough where we've got sort of well, for want of a better word, a patron. You know, I've got Carl Benjamin,
mm,
you've got Gavin McInnes. I mean, it's something at least where there are some sort of good men left in the world that are prepared to sort of bloody well stand up a little bit now and again
well,
and
yeah. I
fight
mean,
for being just to tell the truth, just to be honest. You know, where you can. You know,
yeah.
it doesn't sound like too much. Again, when we were kids, right,
Uh-huh,
that was just
mhm,
the norm.
right.
You'd be an absolute moral coward if you didn't do that, right?
And look, there's room for disagreement. It's not like I'm like tapped into the truth in some way that other people aren't. I research these things. I have no dog in this fight. This is actually what happened. It's like history. When I
Right.
walked into history to learn about it, I wasn't like, "Ooh, fingers crossed. I hope history turns out the way I want it to." No, it's
Yeah.
just what happened. And so I express that. And obviously, people can disagree on a point here or there, or even my whole premise, but you're going to be wrong. And that's the fun part of it. We're not even talking about that. We're talking about people saying, I just don't like you, shut up, and I'm taking your money away. And
Yeah.
that's horrendous. And you suggested that they go over to Subscribestar. I think it's mandatory at this point. I think it's spiritually, they must feel compelled. I would say go and do it. I mean, look, here's the thing. I'm not Steven Crowder. I'm not Ben Shapiro. I'm not Don Sargoon. I don't have the Mug Club or the freaking Lotus Eater. I got Patreon, or I had Patreon, has gone. So I need whoever wants, and if you haven't listened to my stuff, you're missing out. Come over, let me win you over. Let me seduce you. Give me a month. If I can't seduce you in a month, I will walk away.
Give him a whirl, people. One of the things you mentioned there is you said like we're historians. Of course, I'm a sort of famously, my whole thing is a history nerd, history buff. But you're at uni, you did history, so you are
Hmm.
trained as a historian. It's
Oh
one of
yeah.
the things as well that that when you look back at history, we've gone through this. Civilization has gone through this quite a number of times. Waves of sort of censorship or even sort of ultra censorious regimes, and
Hmm.
um, and uh, and people have even from ancient times onwards, and people have written about it quite emotionally, quite eloquently about what it's like to live through a period of harsh censorship. And at the moment, it's not anywhere near as bad as it could be. You know, people aren't disappeared
Yeah.
off to gulags yet. And so I just feel like if and when, because we're on that trajectory though, we are on that trajectory. So if and when that comes,
Mm.
I refuse really to be one of those people that look back on the previous decade or two when it was fairly clear we were on that slippery slope, we were on that trajectory, and I did nothing and I said nothing. I just
Hmm.
refuse to be one of those. I'm gonna say something. You know, I feel like it's the least I can do. You know, I'm not going to go out there and do anything violent, of course. I'm not going to take any
Right.
massive action. I've been on a few marches. I feel like they're mostly worthless. The authorities ignore it. I went on the anti-war demonstration in London in the
Mm.
Gulf War Two. There was like I think there was nearly 1 million people there, and the government utterly ignored it. The Pentagon had already made up their mind that they were going to go to war, so they utterly ignored it. So I don't think that going out on a demonstration or even having fistfights with Antifa is kind of pointless. But I'm going to say something. If I can write articles and have them published, no matter how small the readership, I'm going to do that. You know, I've got a voice, I've got a pen, I'm going to use it. And I feel
Hmm.
like if enough people sort of refuse to be quiet, just in their own lives, just in their own circles of friends and family, yeah, it's gonna piss off some of them, and that you're going to
Yeah.
lose some friends. and you're not going to be as close to some family members as you might have been, well, that may be the price we'll have to pay to not end up in a type of Maoist dictatorship where where your friends and family squill you up and you end up going to a camp and you may not survive that camp because you were guilty of wrongthink. That's where we're going. That's where we're going. And I wouldn't be able to forgive myself. I wouldn't be able to sleep if I didn't do anything, if I didn't say anything.
I know, I totally agree. I mean, you're right that the impulse you have is totally correct. And, it reminds me of like court jesters back in the day and nowadays comedians where, things are funny because they're true and because they're willing to push the envelope and say things that might cross the line or make people a little bit uncomfortable. And yet it still has either a kernel of truth to it or more. And now with YouTubers and people who have microphones that never had microphones, it's almost like there's a jester class of content creators who have had to come up and fill in the gaps because you've seen comedians get canceled left and right. Is there a comedian standing that hasn't been canceled? Because they're, trying to do their job and they're getting shut down by the outrage mob. And it's so sad because this is a role in society, and now we're recently going through a dilemma of what is a woman and, oh my God, we can't like agree that biology exists and sex is real. Otherwise, we're going to get canceled. And you see the power being wielded from topic to topic. And it's going to be another topic, but it'll be the same dynamic. And it'll be the same people getting crushed under the weight of that censorship.
Yeah, again, of course, I'm preaching to the converted. I'm preaching to the choir here, having a conversation with you. I know you know this.
Okay.
But if you never stand up and just stare somebody down who's trying to bully you into not saying the truth, if you don't, in real terms, in a real life conversation, face to face, if people don't more stand up and say, no, I don't accept what you're saying. No, for example, the gender thing. No, there are two women. There are two genders. It's as simple as that.
Women? Tell me more.
There's you've got an X and a Y chromosome or two X chromosomes. That's it. Or, you might be able to, you shouldn't even really concede, but you could say, there are a very, very, very small number of genuinely intersex people. But beyond that, no, there's two genders and that's it. You're talking nonsense. I'm not going to accept what you're saying. And no, I won't shut up. No, I'm not going to. I refuse. And then take the repercussions of that. Now, if they want to go mad, they want to sort of literally scream at you or something. Well, so be it. Because if not, then we end up in a truly mad society, a truly mad world.
It's disgraceful. Also, personally, I'd feel embarrassed if I let those things stand. It reminds me of Hogwarts Legacy and J.K. Rowling. When I see her on Twitter, that is the art of fuck you money in practice.
Yeah.
So she is so insulated and safe and secure. She's her own ecosystem that she can say whatever the fuck she wants. And she's just like, I'm going to, put my foot down and say that womanhood is a thing, which is, kind of a fundamental part of, I guess she's a second wave feminist or something. But okay, feminist, great. But, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think even the men who are against feminists, which I know Don Sargoon is, would concede the point that women exist. So I think we can agree on that. But I feel like what I'm trying to do at Subscribestar now and Censored.tv AIU coupon code is have my own brand of fuck you money. It's not huge wealth. I'm not a millionaire, but if people support me, I can say whatever I want, the same way that J.K. Rowling can. So fuck you money doesn't have to be massive, Joe Rogan level. It can be just, viable. But to do that, you have to have the support of others. And so that's why I honestly probably wouldn't even be doing these things. I'd just be, huddled away making my videos if I wasn't hobbled by Patreon recently. But it is nice to come out and have a chat.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's always a pleasure to speak to you. I would like to, if you want to, come on again or come on History Bro and we'll talk about history or something. But I just wanted to do, if we could give you any sort of voice here, because it's just a true injustice where what your crimes, your thought crimes, your
Mm.
crimes against sort of the woke world order are, of course, not crimes at all. Of course, you
Yeah.
haven't done anything wrong. You've been tried by them and found guilty for something which is morally good.
And
So
I dare them to tell me what it was. I mean, I wish they would. And I'm sending them emails. I sent them one today. And I'm saying, tell me what I said, and
yeah,
then let's discuss it. Like, first of all, I've been with you for 10 years, earning you money. I've made thousands of videos I've posted to your platform. Apparently, in one of these videos, I said something so atrocious. I mean, I know what I say.
mm,
My fans are all like in full agreement. They're like, this guy is not hateful. What are you doing?
mm, mm,
It's simply a spasm of their discomfort on the topic of race. Obviously, it's politically motivated. They're activists. They're doing this because they just want to carve out a world that they are more comfortable in and silence the opposition. And this ties into Carl. Carl was banned from Patreon for a ridiculous reason. Ridiculous.
mm,
They violated their own terms. They found something he said off platform,
mm,
and
mm,
they neutered him. The difference with Carl, though, is that he had a platform at the time. He had a massive YouTube channel, still does, and he just told them what happened and said, "Hey, come to subscribe to it," and they all did. And he probably ended up making way more money. I don't have the YouTube platform that I once had because I've already been banned from that. So I'm sitting here sending out mass emails to my patrons, and 10% of them are opening them, and it's like I got to resell 1,000 people. It's not happening.
mm.
So it's look, for most people it's like, okay, another act of censorship and Patreon's left-wing scum, we get it. For me, it's like a personal tragedy that my career is now teetering in the balance because half my income just got jacked for no reason.
Mm, yeah. What's the guy's name? Jack
Conte.
Conte. Yeah,
Yeah,
like
he's a weird one. I don't like his vibe.
I don't trust him
Mm-mm.
at all. At all. Just everything about him is untrustworthy. That's what I was saying earlier about how a lot of people are a bit credulous, a bit too trusting, because just on the surface of it, he
Mm-hmm.
seems fairly reasonable. He seems fairly nice. But of
Yeah,
course, stop being naive. Stop being
I know.
crazy. Of course, he's an ideologue. Of
I mean,
of of course, he's an arch
yes,
leftist, and
if
he
I said,
means to destroy freedom of speech and freedom of expression in all sorts of ways. Of
yeah,
course, come on.
yeah, I know it's happened many, many times. If I say to my father, Dad, trouble on the work front, the Trust and Safety Board at Patreon, a multi-billion-dollar company in Silicon Valley, have deemed me in violation of a hate speech policy.
Mm,
What do you think he's going to say or think? He's going to
right.
think, "Oh, what did you say, you asshole? Like, what did you do?
Yeah. Yeah.
You clearly did something."
Yeah.
And like, if I explain, Dad, they have no case. They've presented zero evidence of this. Uh, I mean, the fact that they think they have a fair process and I'm supposed to appeal something when they don't even tell me what I did is, it's lunacy. It's surreal, and it's embarrassing. That's the other thing.
Yeah.
Me
Yeah.
explaining that to them, like that your system is so completely corrupt. They are the prosecution and the judge that I'm appealing to.
Yeah. Yeah.
The prosecution is the judge, and they come in and go, "You're guilty." And I go, "Of what?" And they go, "Don't worry about it. You're guilty."
Yeah.
And they're like, but you can defend yourself. I don't. The defense arrests. Am I supposed to prove a negative? Like this is,
Yeah.
it's insane. But like, there's variants of the same insanity that all of you are aware of. This one happens to hit close to home. This is not some blue-haired girl in her attic spitting nonsense. This is a person that just shut off the money valve to my life
Mm,
because of this bullshit.
mm. It's like I would call it a kangaroo court, but it's not even a court. There
Yeah,
was no trial.
no,
There was no
I know.
trial. You were just found
There's no trial.
guilty. Uh, I mean, the idea that it's hate speech as well. I mean, it's
Mm,
because, again, on the surface, that sounds terrible. Like, someone, even if they suspect you said something hateful, it's like, oh,
like,
but
okay,
it's just nonsense. I mean, I myself on History Bro got one warning.
right.
And ever since then, the channel is completely strangled. It couldn't be more strangled
Mm,
for hate speech. And I made a video where it was World War II footage and an AC/DC song. There was no speech. There was no speech
oh my
at
God.
all.
just a piece of art.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it was like a World War II footage music video type thing. I didn't say a word. Nobody said a word. It's literally all that was, and so. But no, it's hate speech. So,
So
and I had to say to some people I know, or like again, my dad, he said, like, what's going on with it? And I said, well, they've accused me of hate speech. And the look on his face, like, what did you do? What did you say?
exactly.
You dirty little Nazi fascist. What on earth did you say?
Right.
And when I explain it to him, it's like, oh, well, that's mad. That doesn't really make any sense. That's clearly
But it's
unfair.
the power of the accusation is something that,
yeah,
it's probably been
the
studied,
stain
but
of
like,
it. Yeah,
yeah, it's,
you're
you get put on the
hateful.
defensive. Right.
Yeah.
It's just terrible. Um, I don't know what the solution is with any of this. I mean,
No, it's
I
going to get a
feel,
lot worse before it gets better. I fear.
yeah, I feel like backed into a corner with it all. It's, I've been kind of tiptoeing and hoping that this wouldn't happen with Patreon. I always knew there was a massive risk there. I mean, I would name my videos like video number 820. Like I didn't want to give them any incentive to, dive in and look at me. But look, if you were to say like the one thing in my videos that is a theme, I feel like I'm a morally sane person. I'm like an Eagle Scout. And this is again embarrassing to say out loud, but like I'm against murder and crime, assault, rape. Like I frown upon it.
That's
I
far
won't
right,
say
isn't it now?
yeah, exactly. I
That's
won't
far
say I
right.
hate them. Like, oh yeah, I respect the cops and recognize how important that job is in our society. Um, so if you're against that, you can't be that against it because that might be hateful. So I like to say I frown upon rapists and murderers. Okay, what if I'm aware of who's doing it?
Hmm.
To what degree? What if there's a percentage of my country that is doing it at a ridiculously disproportionate degree? Am I allowed to condemn those people?
No,
Now,
you're not
if I
allowed to
just
notice. No, you're not allowed to
no,
notice, apparently.
so already they're so uncomfortable that I have to come out with caveats like I don't condemn all of the people from that demographic. Why would I? Like I'm not condemning the black dentist who has a job and raises a family. Why would I? I'm against slavery, guys. Sorry about that. Like these caveats are so indicative of just how pussified the world is and how far off the plot we have become.
And it doesn't
Where it's
save you
like,
anyway, right? It doesn't
no,
actually
no,
help in the end because some
exactly.
ideologue like this Blair will just
Hmm.
they'll ignore that bit.
Right. So, and it's just a feeling. So it's like it's a hate. It's not hate speech. It's a hate vibe that I gave up. It's
Right, yeah, yeah.
you're condemning too many people that I'm trying to protect. Oh, and by the way, they call that a protected class or protected group. I believe in one of her emails to me, she's like, "You were propagating negative stereotypes of a protected group."
Hmm.
Now, a stereotype. Oh my God. Stereotypes are all true. And so again, it's like this not all thing. Like you have to come out and go, I'm not saying all, I'm saying the ones that are, the ones, I mean, it's just so ridiculously limiting to say you cannot speak. What they're saying is you don't speak negatively about anything.
Hmm. Hmm.
You could positively stereotype anyone. But even that takes shit. I saw a group of Asians on Vice recently, and they were bitching about being called the model minority. And it was like, what? It's a compliment.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. There's no winning. I mean, like I say, it's a slippery slope to, I believe, unfortunately,
Mhm.
to something like the Maoist state, where you're not really supposed to voice any opinion, certainly any political opinion, which is an absolutely lock stock in line with the party.
Mm.
You're not allowed. You're not allowed to have. You're not allowed to write a poem. You're not allowed to write anything down. You're not allowed to write an essay or anything, which is an absolutely in line with the party. Unfortunately, I think that is the trajectory we're on, terrifyingly so. It takes a groundswell of normal people to say no. That's what it
Yeah,
takes, and so that's why. And I don't see that in the West we're there yet. There's still
maybe not.
too many normies who sort of have got their head in the sand like an ostrich, refuse to realise that we're in this conflict, at least
Well,
intellectual type conflict, where you're going to have to man up get some guts, get some balls, and say no. I mean, it's easier said than done. You know, I've already crossed the line. You know, so I've already done it. But lots of people they feel like, well, they have got a lot more to lose.
They do. There's
than us.
Too much personally at stake. They don't have fuck you money. They don't have. They're reliant on not being ostracized by their social group. And so that's why women know this. Women are coded with this in them instinctively. They're like, don't rock that goddamn boat. I need people to protect me, and I need to have friends in the community. I need to be liked. Like, I don't care about Emmett Till or the freaking rape in Central Park. I want to be liked. That's the number one thing, and it yields benefits to us. Trust me. And that conversation is happening, I bet you, all the time, where a guy's typing out some angry tweet and the wife is like, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? Do not cause attention to us. This is going to backfire on us.
Yeah.
Now, as far as history goes, the one thing I learned, the residual thing I learned from history, I've forgotten like 90% of the facts I learned, but it was the general insight that what you thought you knew, you really didn't know. And you have to inspect it and do the work and go down. Hold on. I heard myself say do the work. And that triggered me because I don't want to be someone that says do the work, because I've heard that said on the left far too often. But you have to get in the trenches, get dirty with it, do the research, and figure this stuff out for yourself, because a lot of what you think you know is not true. And you'd be shocked at how much. That does sound conspiratorial now too. I don't want to go too far off the deep end there. Some of the stuff you think is true. But it takes time. This is a logistical thing where we just don't have the bandwidth to go and figure this all out for ourselves. So we're supposed to trust people. The problem is the people we're supposed to trust are failing it at their job. They're not doing us right.
Yeah, and another thing I find sort of maddening is that you'll get someone that says something ever so slightly truthful or based or something, and they're clearly not on the side of Western civilization or on the side of goodness and decency, but they said one thing once that was sort of a bit like that, you know. Someone like Andrew Tate they say the odd thing which seems right and appealing and righteous. The rest of what they say is sort of weird nonsense, but you know, they'll say one thing, or like Jon Stewart will come out and say one base thing, and suddenly everyone thinks he's our man, or he'll lead us to the and it's like, again, come on, like, get real, grow up a bit, you know, open your eyes. Wipe the shit out of your eyes, for God's sake. Like, don't you realize what's happening? You know, don't you see what's going on? Why are you like clinging on to like Kanye? Or, you know, you know, like, oh, Kanye's our boy. It's like, are you joking? Of course not. Like, of course not.
Well, people are that desperate for some moment of clarity from someone. Just someone be real about anything once. More often would be greater. But like, even guys like Don Lemon just got canceled for something he said about women. He got removed from his morning show on CNN because he said that a Republican woman was, I think she was talking trash about Biden not being in his prime. And he's like, let's be honest, she's not in her prime. And he goes, women are in their prime in their 20s, 30s, and then added 40s. And the two women sitting next to him are like, what are you talking about? Our sexual prime? Or like, what prime are you referring to? And so he kind of put his foot in his mouth and he's like, oh, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying Google's saying that. It's just known that women are in their prime in their 20s and 30s. And for what, you know, he couldn't, even Don Lemon, who's like, you know, very much on the left, he got canceled. And I'm not saying I agree with him. I don't even know what he was trying to say like that. But it was like political.
Well, you can never be woke enough. I mean, what an absolute pussy. I saw a clip of Gavin just the other day, actually, who was on some news show. I think it was Hannity or something. He's arguing with the female anchor, and she's saying, "Oh, how dare you?" You know, and he said, and he just, you know, he didn't back down. He doubled down. He said, "No, you're unhappy. You would be better at home being a mum right now." You know, that's the attitude. It's like, no, I'm not going to suddenly start apologising for speaking the truth or for having an opinion which is haram, which is against your worldview. No, that's my opinion. So take it or leave it. No, I'm
Well,
not going to start apologizing. No.
the question is, how do we get more people to join the ranks? Because we need a critical mass, and it's like it can't be Gavin McInnes and J.K. Rowling and Don Sargoon and me. It's like it's got to be people who look, and it can't just be anonymous people and trolls on the internet. It can't be your burner account where you're like spitting hot truths on whatever platform, and there's no, you're right what you're saying, but it holds no weight. You're not signing your name to it, and so therefore it's not going to take any sort of, it's not going to have an impact in society the way it would if you just in your private life, in your personal life, said these things. So how do we deal with the fact that there are real consequences? It's very understandable for people to bite their tongue on many of these things because I've seen people, get burned at the stake. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that aside from developing economic systems that can support people. And clearly even Patreon, a goddamn credit card processor, I can't even trust them to do the one job I needed them for.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I mean, personally, I do go on Twitter under my real name. This is my real name, my real face and everything. It's actually my real face, if you can believe that. But
Love
yeah,
it.
I understand how a lot of people, well, it gets to the point where I say it's going to probably get worse before it gets better. It gets to the point where they come for people's kids. They make your community unsafe. Like literally, they put your kids at risk of being sexually assaulted or something.
I saw a ridiculous video.
It's at that point, I think, where normal people actually will stop caring that maybe they might lose their job or they might lose some friends or some close relatives and things, because it's literally start doing something or you're going to lose your kids. Your kids are going to be assaulted or murdered or raped or something. It's at that point, I think in history, it shows that quite often when it gets to that point, and we're not that far away from it, in fact, we're already there in some places, in some pockets. When it gets to that point, I think it's like when people start going hungry. If you put people's kids in danger, or you start starving them, then they start doing things. And, I don't think we're too far away.
It reminds me of, like, you see acts of violence in schools and kids getting severely beaten on, and those videos are popping up. And we're seeing that for the first time in history, basically. School fights and a vicious variant of them, especially with also the trans issue where, should kids be transitioning? That has, rung a few alarm bells. And you're right. When the kids get involved, people start to be like, okay, enough is enough. Let's actually take some action on this. But I don't know. I'm hopeful. I don't look. We're spinning out of control. It's chaos. Like, this is a massive social experiment, and we're sort of ricocheting off every mistake that could possibly be made. And I'm not sure if there's any sort of rudder where we can guide the flow of the chaos. It seems to just be in control of the situation.
Well, Christianity will save us, Devon. Absolutely.
There we go. Finally. Yeah, but there was a big push. There's like a big ad campaign for Jesus Christ and whatnot.
Yeah.
Oh, I saw this crazy video of this purple-haired Asian woman from the same Vice panel. She has a TikTok where she's completely racist. She talks, shit about white people all the time. But she did a thing where she found 4 sorority girls from San Diego, and they were out at a club, or it was after they had gotten out of a club. There's a guy selling hot dogs. This happens all the time in California. And he's selling hot dogs, and one of the girls is sort of like a little frisky. She's kind of drunk, and she takes some of the onions that he's cooking, and he goes, hey, what are you doing? Don't do that. Like, you didn't buy that. Like, don't just take the onions. And this Asian woman decided to dox all of these women. She posts up their face, their name, the sorority they're in, the school they're in. And she goes, we need to hold these people accountable. We have to go after them. Now, this is all like sexual insecurity from the woman and envy. And it's just vicious and punitive. And it's like, what? That's the world we live in. I'm not saying what she was doing was right, but it's like so minor. And the response is so savage and ridiculous. And look, it's like, if given the power, would a person do a messed up thing, like dox someone and try to ruin their life? Yeah, they're going to do all of that. You just gave them all this power. Of course, they're going to misuse it. Just like Blair misused her power and banished me because she declared what I said to be hate speech, even though she's afraid to tell me what it is.
You're right. It's like the biggest sort of ongoing chaotic social experiment there could be. Yeah, if the sort of if the overlords, whoever that is, sort of the people that
Hmm.
control the Democrat Party or the WEF or whoever it is, if their goal is to just create chaos, just to use the transgender thing for one example, just to sow division, just to
Hmm.
create chaos.
Well, and
Like the climate change thing, it's just to destroy the fabric of particularly Western society. Well, they're doing a very good job. It's very efficient
yeah,
at doing that, unfortunately. And
the thing is, in the midst of all that, of all this chaos and division and profiteering off of, race hustling and all that stuff, left, right, political bullshit, quietly underneath all that, people's lives are getting worse and worse,
yeah,
economically, but also, like, dare I say, spiritually. Their mental well-being, emotionally, the suicide rate has steadily climbed since this social experiment began. Shocking numbers. The drug epidemic, the American dream totally toasted. Home ownership is a joke. There's real
birth
problems.
rates. Yeah, I mean, if you look at birth rates and suicide rates in Soviet Russia, in Stalinist Russia, and in
Mhm.
Maoist China, yeah, again, it's through the roof. People don't want to live
Right.
like that. They can't really live like that.
So the opportunity cost of us discussing what ends up being inane bullshit, or things that shouldn't, like, we really shouldn't be arguing about a lot of this stuff.
Yeah,
Um,
it's a diversion.
Especially, yeah, because there's other important things that need to be addressed. And because we're not addressing it, people are suffering. The answers are not being provided. And oftentimes answers are coming in extreme forms, like what's his name? The kickboxer. Um, the sex trafficking
Oh, Andrew
kickboxer from
Tate.
Romania. Exactly. He'll give an answer, or people will seek it from anywhere, because we have generations of people who are, like, basically lost, and they're like, they look on their phones and are like, this orgy of lies and insanity, that's my guiding light, that's my role model.
Mm, mm,
Like, it's just, I shudder in fear for my niece and nephew, who are, you know
yeah,
they're coming into the world, into this, and it's like, what, this is the best we have.
mm. Yeah, yeah, it is worrying, Devon.
Yeah,
It's
but I
it's
mean,
worrying.
I don't know. Look, I want to preface that by saying, maybe at other points in history, people have said, "Oh, it's all going to hell." I don't think so, though. We weren't saying this in 2015,
Mm,
or even as much, or
mm,
2010. This was not being said. In 1990s, it was not being said.
mm,
Maybe
mm.
some people were,
Well, I mean,
but not.
before the modern era, societies changed very, very, very slowly, if nothing else.
Mhm. Yeah.
You lived a life and you lived in a society that was almost identical to your father and grandfather.
Mm-hmm.
And it's only in the sort of post-industrial, in the modern era, really, when from generation to generation, there could be sort of sea changes in ethics and morality and just the way of life.
Oh yeah, like.
And the change we've seen, we're old enough, just about old enough to recognise this, aren't we? The change we've seen in the last 5, 10, 15 years is is huge and terrifying.
Yeah.
I absolutely believe that. I think
So,
that is the case.
yeah, like, you look at generations. Here's just a quick stat. It's like, typically you thought you could provide a better life for your children, but they would live a more comfortable, better life than yours, and there was a great expectation that that would happen. You pass along all the stuff. That was the whole objective. Now it's commonly understood that you will live a life worse than your grandparents, worse than your parents. That is the grim reality, the economic reality.
Mm,
Um, People living with their parents, they
mm.
used to be shunned in a way that, people would laugh at that. A 30-year-old living at home, or, well, what kind of a loser? I mean, now I'm about to go. I'm about to go back to LA. Three of my friends that I grew up with on my block, like two houses down, three of them are my age. They're living at home with their parents. Like, one lives in the garage, one lives in his childhood home. My parents were like, "Hey, Devin, you come stay with us for a little while." You know why? Because there's a house. They just put it on the market down the street, down the block from my father's house. They're renting it per month, 60,000 a month they want for that house. Now, it is a massive house, to be fair, but there's no freaking way. The
Mm,
houses
mm,
cost so much. in this area, but just the housing market in general, that people are forced to do, get second jobs and just completely redefine their life to somehow make it in the society.
Mm.
And again, meanwhile, we're talking about trans people are cheating and we got men breaking female world records, and it's entertaining and whatnot. There's a place for that,
Mm.
but it cannot be the number one thing on our mind when our lives are being adversely affected by the conditions that we're forced to live in.
Mm. No, I know it's a crazy situation. When you say the next generations may well be worse, have a lower standard of living. Unfortunately, that is what I do see in the future. Hopefully, it's not too bad. Hopefully, that sort of dip in the graph isn't too extreme. But I also think, I wonder what you think of this. Again, showing our age a bit, or just old enough to remember. I feel like the 80s and 90s, or certainly before 9/11, was sort of halcyon times, halcyon days, that we almost a golden age. Things seem so much better in the 90s. I mean,
Look, I don't think you're wrong. I don't think that's just pure nostalgia. I
think not. Yeah.
No, the problems were different. We still had various messed up things. It's just it wasn't, maybe out of sight, out of mind is the name of the game, because there was, rape and murder and all sorts of
Yeah, the world wasn't
stuff going
perfect.
on.
I'm not saying that, but
No, but it wasn't in your face. If some guy, put a hatchet in someone's head in Iowa, you wouldn't see that. You wouldn't see it visually. I see someone get killed on my timeline every day. Like, that wasn't happening in the 90s.
Yeah.
The net cumulative effect of the stuff, the visual stuff, the information we are exposed to daily is not healthy for us. It's true, it's real, but maybe it's not the best idea for every Joe citizen to absorb every foul thing that is happening in the world every day, nonstop, 24/7. I mean, clearly that's going to mess you up. So I don't know how we're supposed to detach from that and pry ourselves off of the curiosity. It's like Pandora's box is open. Can we close it a little bit?
Yeah.
Is that possible?
Yeah, it's right. Like on the timeline, I'll see someone kicked to death.
Yeah.
Like Joe Rogan will just post a video of someone kicking someone else to death or something. It's like,
right,
okay.
Well, and like the porn thing is a perfect example. It's like, who's having discussion? Okay, that sea of porn that is just like every sexual, like countless, like the grains of sand on the beach. Is it? I know you want to sort of investigate every one of those, but you probably shouldn't.
I heard Jordan Peterson put it very well the other day. He said, any kid, unfortunately, that's the real dark thing about it. Any kid on their phone can see more naked women or pornographic images or whatever in 5 minutes than any king in all of history in his whole life.
You are, as a child, you are one Google search away from ending your childhood.
Right.
I mean, I remember when I was like 8, some guy said there was a Playboy in a sewer. and we went there and put our eye through the hole of the sewer grid thing, and we could see it. It was like 30 feet down. We could see there's mud on top of it, partial boob. Like, that was what we thought we'd gotten away with something. Like, that was an amazing win for us. And it's like, again, who is in charge of this? No one. And all these conspiracy theories is like, oh, it's the Illuminati, it's the Jews, it's the World Economic Forum. I wish it was somebody like that. It's nobody. That's the scary thing. It's nobody. Right. No one's steering the ship, people.
Yeah, it's a phone and having access to the internet, right? In many ways. It's right. Sorry, go on.
You could predict this. I mean, if you had got a team of people in 1993 and said, hey, what if we had this technology that could provide all this stuff? What do you think is going to happen to the suicide rate, to racial division, what do you think? I mean, they could have written a story of this. This is why we have Black Mirror. Black Mirror it's in an episode of Black Mirror. Life is an episode of Black Mirror. If given technology, what are humans going to do to screw it up and make a mess of it? That's what we're all doing right now. Some of us, it's against our will. We're not trying to. There's also good stuff. I mean, we could sit here and just talk about good stuff.
Right. I mean, that was the point I was going to make. That the thing about the internet, I find, is that it's quite a true reflection of humanity. And what I mean by that is that it's extremely dark and disgusting and perverse and wonderful, beautiful
It, it's
amazing. It's both
yeah,
those things at
but
exactly the same time.
comedy and
Um,
tragedy. It's a human condition. I mean, life is wondrous, but also you're gonna die, and everyone you love is gonna die. I mean, it's like it's a
yeah.
tragic thing. I mean, I could sit here and tell you, go watch Puss in Boots, the sequel, The Last Wish. It's an amazing movie. I've watched it like 10 times.
I
It's
mean, you can
I've
find
always,
videos of people hearing for the first time, and it will
yeah.
draw you to tears. Of or the cutest puppy or kitten or whatever your thing
Mhm.
is. It's sort of unbelievably wholesome. It couldn't be
Okay.
more wholesome. And then you've got just ridiculous porn and violence, actual death, snuff footage, endless snuff
Hmm.
footage. It's like you've got both of those things at your fingertips, and as you say, every child almost with a phone is one link away from the worst of it. How is
Well,
that not going to have an adverse effect
yeah,
on society in the broadest
of
sense?
course.
Of course, it's
Of
going to.
we
It's
have to have rules.
terrifying, really.
Someone has to write a book. Like Dr. Spock wrote a book back in the day about like how to raise a child. Basically, we need a book of how to live with the internet, how to live in the information age. So, for example,
Uh,
the earthquake in Syria and where was it, Turkey?
Turkey,
Like
yeah.
terrible, freaking terrible. What is my moral obligation to research that, watch footage of that, soak up the tragedy of all that? Should I? Like I didn't. I didn't. I assume it's horrible. I've
Uh,
seen videos. Like,
yeah, yeah.
why would I?
Mm,
What is the benefit of me diving into that
mm,
when there's nothing I can do about it? So that's a calculation that I'm not sure people are making consciously
right.
because you're just being presented stuff. It's like, here's the thing. Oh, okay. Well, I guess I'll look at the thing then. It's like, should we be?
I did the same. I mean, I say sometimes you can't help it. You're scrolling down Twitter and there's just almost a gif of something absolutely unbelievably violent or horrible. But back in the day, I remember when there was a bit of a spate of beheadings in Iraq. There was Nick Berg.
Yeah.
You remember Nick Berg? Was a British
Hmm.
guy, Ken Bigley. And anyway, I remember I must have been, I don't know what I was, like 18 or something. And I'd never
Okay.
seen anything that graphically violent. And I saw Ken Bigley, I think it was, get beheaded. And
Oh,
uh, after that, I sort of made a conscious decision. Like people would send you things in on your phone in the subsequent years, and I'd be like, "No, I'm not
yeah.
interested." I have made a conscious decision. No, I'm not going to deliberate because you can't unsee it, right? You
Right.
can't unsee
You
it. It's there.
gotta.
It's in your psyche now forever. So I made a conscious decision. I don't watch any of that. Like for example, there was one in Syria where a guy was set alight in a cage by
Mm,
ISIS, and I
yeah.
haven't
So
seen that to this day. I refuse to watch it. I don't want to watch it. I don't want to watch it. But that's the thing. I'm sort of old enough and embittered enough to make that conscious decision and to stick by it. But
well,
how a 13-year-old is going to know that is going to be
yeah.
that sort of wise. I don't want to call myself wise or anything, but a kid just is not going to be able to make that sort of decision and stick to it, are they?
In
They're just
the
a lamb to the slaughter in that sense.
For sure. In the defense of the clip of the guy getting set on fire in the cage, the cinematography was outstanding.
Oh, really? They got the lighting
Um,
spot on, did they?
yeah, they waited for the magic hour, and it was just beautiful to behold. But no, I get that. It's horrifying, and it's like here's an example though. Think of George Floyd, the
Mm.
video that
Mm.
was taken
Right,
by
that's
that
life, isn't it?
black woman. Right. So she took the video. Imagine if we could go back in time and ask her this question. You saw what happened after that. Um, like 50 people were murdered in a series of riots that caused billions of dollars of destruction, all sorts of racial animus, outrage, destruction. Would you release that clip again, knowing what's going to come? And her answer, 100% yes,
Mhm.
she would. Why? They started a GoFundMe for her. She made hundreds of thousands of dollars,
Really, I
if not
didn't even know
millions.
that.
Yeah, people profited off of this. So the answer to 9 out of 10 questions is money. Of course, she's releasing the footage. So the question of just because you can do something, should you do something, is one that human beings fail.
Hmm.
Their answer is
Mm.
wrong,
Mhm. Mm.
like often. So the 13-year-old, hey, should you spend the next 10 hours binge fapping to every porn you can get your hands on? They're saying yes. And it, look, if left to their own devices, we're going to be Lord of the Flies.
Mhm.
The point of Lord of the Flies is there were no parents.
Mm.
If there were parents on that island, they wouldn't have let those kids get the way they did. So
Mhm.
you're supposed to have the smarter, wiser people guide and educate and oversee some of these
Mm.
things. But the profit incentive gets in the way. And again, it is chaos. No one's controlling this.
You're right. It's like an axiom, maybe a maxim of sort of the human experience that sort of anything that can be done, someone's going to do it. You know, like as soon as we can make poison gas, we did it. As soon as we can build a nuclear bomb, we did it. You know, it's
Yeah,
like
I
nobody's
know.
there's no foot on the gas. So on the
It,
brakes. Sorry, there's no foot on the brakes.
well,
It is
and now
worrying
AI,
that that's a trait deep down in humans.
yeah, it's. I used to think the idea of parallel dimensions and universes was crazy. Like, oh, everything that's ever could happen, every possibility is like. It seems to be in every other Marvel movie. It's they're talking about this, but now I feel like we're living in every possible timeline
Right.
all at once. Like everything's happening.
I know what you mean. I feel that.
But also, it's look, we've gone from living very locally. So even way back in the day, like caveman days, we're talking 30 people, family group, hunters gatherers. But now we're global and 7, 8 billion people on the planet. It's a lot of people doing a lot of things, posting a lot of crap.
Mm,
Now, maybe we're not adept at sifting through all that crap and having an influx of that crap. It's a typhoon of crap. Whereas I think we'd all be a little bit better off, a little more simplified, a little more streamlined, and a little more conscious of just what our daily diet of just energy and information, it is toxic. The average diet of information is toxic.
mm.
So I am open to suggestions. I don't suggest going down like into some culty thing or shutting yourself off, living in ignorance. I'm not suggesting any of that. But where the balance is and how you're supposed to find that, no one has that solution.
Yeah, it'd be
Is
nice if
my
there was some sort of conversation there. I mean, I
Yeah,
rarely hear people talk about the things we've just been talking about in the last half
true.
hour. You don't hear people, really talk about that much. Um,
No, and it's like it's weird. Like I look at the success of certain things like chess online. Watch someone play a chess game online, analyze it, talk about why they did what they did. That's it. They don't talk about movies, pop culture, news, politics. It's simple. And so you have this fractioning off where people they find their little niche or their hobby and they just dive into that. But the more wholesome it is and the more the boundaries there are within it, the better it is. Like I was watching a GeoGuessr game,
oh, yeah.
and that's a whole subculture. And it's like all they do is GeoGuessr. Like that's it. They're just talking about geography and I think people are thirsty for that because we're sick
Mm,
of
mm,
getting the influx of like, oh, how big was that earthquake? Oh, they just pulled out a kid's body. Oh, he's not going to make it. Like all of that
mm,
crap. It's
mm.
sensational. It's there to get clicks. It's there to make money, but it's also poisoning our spirits. And, and I say that as an atheist, but it's the energy is just not good.
Poison is a good word. Poison is a good word for it, I think. I mean, what I'm hearing from you is that the Amish have got it right.
Yeah,
Which
exactly. We gotta go into the forest, people.
I think
Take
there is
to
a
the highlands.
I think there is a massive demand for sort of wholesome things.
Hmm.
I try and do that a bit with occasionally. A lot of the things, a lot of the articles I write are sort of ultra cynical, but sometimes I try and some of the videos that I make, I try and make it wholesome. Try and review something wholesome,
Yeah,
because it's just this endless slew of sort of depravity, really.
I know, and
Sort
it's
of,
like I'm guilty of this though. Like the nature of most of my videos, I try to add comedy and positivity in how I present, but it's usually talking about something negative. It's usually
yeah,
me saying this is wrong, that's stupid, that's
yeah,
vile,
me
and
too.
yeah, and there's a understandable tendency to want to do that. I will again tell you guys to go see Puss in Boots 2: The Last Wish. It's an amazing movie. I don't care. It's animated. I know it's Puss in Boots. Go watch it. It's an amazing film. But like, it's hard. People want to shit on people. People want to vent. They want to
Mm,
rage. And so it's easy to dogpile and to just get into that outrage culture. There's a reason why that exists. And if we live in an attention economy, to make money, everyone's seeking your attention. Outrage is a perfect outrage and fear. Those
mm,
things are incredible. They work way more than like, now look, there is a cat lady demographic out there that's just, you're going to put out cuteness and they're going to gravitate to that. But specifically for men,
mm.
outside of your little thing, whatever your thing, if it's your sport or your hobby, are you really going to try something new if it's just positive? Like, hey, here's a great album I like. Let me talk about that. You think that's going to get clicks?
Right. Yeah.
Now, it
Right.
could be a nice thing, but again, these YouTubers and most people online, they're in a business first and foremost. And that business negativity will beat out positivity.
Yeah,
It
I'm
will
I'm
win the day.
guilty of it. We're both guilty of it. Lotus
Yeah.
Eaters is guilty of it. I mean, like I say, I try and put out uh, good, wholesome, positive things sometimes, but mostly not. You know,
Well,
mostly
look,
I'm just trying to dunk on people on Twitter, for example.
yeah,
Like,
it's
I
fun.
mean, I was put into very sharp focus for me about a year ago. I was on the afternoon podcast, and I did a bit that was about
Mm.
Mars, or it was about space telescopes or something. It was supposed to be sort of a wholesome, good, positive thing about space and science. And the other segment was about the Bataclan massacre, the Islamist Bataclan massacre. And the numbers, it just wasn't close. It just
Yeah.
wasn't close. The Bataclan thing did really well, and the space thing died on its arse.
Well, maybe
People clicked on the horror, and they
yeah.
weren't interested in, you know, science and progress and niceness, good things.
Okay, well,
Simple as that.
thinking out loud, I think, because I fall victim to this as well, but like, um, I think why people gravitate towards the disaster and towards the violent stuff is because it's not because they have some sick desire to dive into that. It's because it feels more meaningful. And so, me reviewing something positive or me hyping Puss in Boots, which I've been doing all stream, um, it doesn't feel meaningful. So it's our challenge to impress upon the audience that things that are positive and wholesome are also meaningful.
Mm,
Like that's the challenge of like a
mm,
sermon. Come to
mm.
think of it, if you're getting out there, Gavin McInnes is telling his audience to, the Proud Boys, don't fap so much, get married and have children. Like this is the, oh my God, this renegade right winger. That's his message. This is like the most cookie cutter, like positive thing in the universe. Um, we have to override the human instinct to gravitate towards the dark and towards the sinister.
Mm.
That can exist, but there has to be a positive um, arena
Yeah,
of content
a
that
positive
I need
vision
to,
for the future, something. Sure.
yeah, it can have a sense of fun and self-awareness. It doesn't have to be like, cheesy. It's just there is more to the world than the darkness and the stupidity and the bullshit going on.
Mm,
It's
mm,
all there. It's all still there. It's just clouded
mm.
because we're problem solvers and it makes sense to solve problems. Like I'm not going to write a song when there's a lion in the bushes. Like I'm going to deal with the lion first before getting back to the song.
Mm, mm. I know what you mean. I do know what you mean. It's worrying.
Oh, maybe that's what it is. It's like I say I'm going to deal with the lion. In other words, I want to solve the problems or address the problems and clean that up before I get to positive, wholesome things. You never clean up the problems.
Right.
They're omnipresent. They're never going anywhere. There's a new thing to be outraged about. There's a new viral video that we're supposed to be shocked and divided over. So
Yeah.
we never get back to Puss in Boots.
Sometimes I just actually can't help myself. I literally come in of a morning saying, right, I'm not going to be like snipe at people and be snidey at people on Twitter or
Uh-huh.
something. And the next article I write, the next bit of content I create is going to be positive. And then something happens, events in the real world sort
Mm.
of goad me into not doing that in the end. And yeah, it's a
Well,
difficult it's a difficult thing to battle. It's a real battle.
I think that it's interesting. We talk about our generation, but like think about guys like Ricky Gervais and John Cleese. To me, it's fascinating to witness how those guys have adopted social media, and they were around long before the internet. They have fame and power and influence, and what they're choosing to do with it, how they choose to engage the haters, the trolls, how they use their power to get
Mm,
their messaging out.
mm,
Ricky Gervais is like, I'm going to do charities, I'm going to do my comedy, I'm going to not bend to the transphobic mafia or the people accusing him of being transphobic. I'm going to talk about animal cruelty because I care. I'm going to post ugly pictures of myself in the bathtub, and I'm going to say whatever the hell I want to say. And he keeps an eye on the positive.
mm,
He's not just
mm,
consumed with negativity and let it define him.
mm,
So, and John Cleese, I got to follow him more, but he's doing his own thing too, and he's not bending the knee of these people.
mm.
I
Yeah,
mean,
he's
so
great.
I look up to those guys, and I just find it interesting how they handle it.
Yeah. No, you're right. You're right. Devon, unfortunately, I think we've got to start draw it to a close. I'm afraid because some of the production staff need to go home. But I could keep chatting to you for hours and hours and hours. I feel like I've barely sort of started the conversation. Could go on and on and on about a number of different topics, but
I wasn't aware that you started recording. I thought this was just the
all right.
pre-show. Okay.
No, but I mean, if you would like to come back on. We can start recording now. John, my production set. Yeah. Anyway, yeah. Unfortunately, I think we have got to draw it to a close. They've got to have dinner and they've got families. But I would like to have you back on another time if you're up for that. Because it's always a pleasure to. It's always a pleasure to chat to you. Like the last conversation we had, I think was a good 2 hours plus, something in that ballpark. And again, I felt like I actually didn't address anything I wanted to talk to you about in that one. And in this one, at first when I thought we were going to talk about Patreon and just the general state of things, I was like, oh, well, I hope we can drag an hour out of that. But again, it's been way more than that. And I still got a number of things I would like to get off my chest or bounce off of you. But there we go. The time is finite, I'm afraid.
I love it. I thank you so much. It's been very fun. I mean, I had no idea where the conversation was going to go. And like any good conversation, that's the way it's supposed to be. And so I'm thinking about things for the first time and formulating thoughts and, just like making it up, basically, like making shit up, but also hearing your perspective and then building something between us. And I'll definitely come back for more. Thank you to the Lotus Eaters, to Don Sargoon, to the production staff. Get home, eat your meal. This was very fun.
And one last time, if anyone wants to save you from the ravages, the injustice of Patreon, they can go to Subscribestar and Censor TV.
Yeah, that's it. Subscribestar.com/atheism and AIU coupon code at censor.tv. Hope to see you there. Give me a chance.
All right, people. Well, Devon, thanks once again. And everyone out there, until next time, take care.